What's up, everyone? This is your host Faraz for the Twice Over Film Club. We're back this week to discuss The Wild Pear Tree. It's a long Turkish language film from 2018. Check out our preview episode if you want more info without spoilers, because of course this discussion has all the spoilers. Anyway, we were quite positive on this movie. Check out the twiceover.com to see how it stacks up with your preferences, and check out all the other movies we've reviewed and discussed on this podcast. Recent ones include Dune, The Hunt, Elizabethtown, and The Green Knight. Alright, it's myself with Fahad and Farhan.
Should we break it up from conversation to conversation?
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. Let's just do that. So it starts off with a Sinan, right? He's back from college. He has just finished. He wants to become a teacher. He has to take a series or an exam to become an educator.
Yeah.
Depending on how he does, that determines where he's gonna get placed in Turkey. What city are they in?
They're in he attended college in a coastal city.
Mm-hmm. Sean, right?
It's like the historical quote unquote city of Troy, right?
Yeah. That's what it seemed like. Yeah, I didn't get the sense that he wanted to be a teacher at all, because he didn't study for it. It seems like what he wants to do.
Well, that was his. Let's say that was his.
His fallback.
Yeah, not even his fallback, but his means of making a living. I don't think he thinks he's gonna become a successful writer. But yes, at the heart of it, he wants to be a writer.
Right. Yeah.
And what's the first conversation that he has? Let's start with that one. Is it with a girl?
I think it's with he's trying to get money for his book, so he speaks to the council.
Mayor.
The mayor.
Yeah,
I guess, right?
Yeah.
Or you're talking about not conversation in general, not the first piece of dialogue. You're talking about the lengthy conversation that he has about his writing.
Correct.
Yeah, the sets of conversations, the series of conversations he has. So the first big one is the one with the mayor. The mayor basically says, "Hey, we'll give you the money as long as your book is specific to tourism to the city." Then,
if you could call it a tourism piece.
Then we can give you the money to get this published. We mentioned how Sinan is you could say he's kind of a purist, right? Maybe a little naive because he's still young.
Yeah, he's definitely a romantic at heart. He's very much wants to live by his ideals of whatever it is.
Yeah, and he obviously considers calling his book a tourist piece, a sellout move in a way. What does he call it? He calls it a meta novel or something, a nonfiction meta novel, something like that.
Yeah. A fictional set of memoirs, I think, right?
Yeah. So the purpose of his book is supposed to give people, the readers, an insight into everyday life in his city, right?
Right.
That's what his book is meant to convey, which is obviously it's basically what the movie is. That's what the movie is doing, right? It's giving us insight on the different people in the town and their lives.
Very good point, Fraz.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize I mean, I didn't put it together. I was like, okay.
Through these conversations, we're pretty much getting what he's trying to convey with his book is what we're getting from these conversations. So we kind of get the idea from the mayor and what kind of position he has, what his viewpoints are. He seems to be pretty encouraging. He wants Sinan to actually get this published. He wants people to be reading books, and he wants people to know about the city that they're in, things like that. But he just can't give him the money because it's out of his hands. He can't pull it out of the budget if it's not specific to the government's work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Through this conversation, we don't really get the sense that why Sinan would be hesitant to publish a tourist guide, right? We don't get his romantic ideals
not
from this
yet.
Right.
Not yet. He definitely says he doesn't want to do that, or he steers the conversation the other way, but he starts laying it down that we'll see further as through his conversations that he's very particular about what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a very I don't know, blinkers on, or what do you call them? Blinders on.
Right. He has a strong sense of what he wants to put into his book. So the mayor sends him off, right? Basically to someone who he thinks might be able to help, someone who's financed books in the past.
So that's where he's going to go next. and on his way he meets a girl from his like school days, pretty much. You could say high school or something. And then they have a conversation, and this is kind of where his douchebaggery kind of
absolutely
comes to the forefront.
she shows like a vulnerable side of herself. She expresses her regrets about not whether it was not studying hard enough to get out of the farm life or something else. Anyway, she expresses some vulnerability, and
she kind of says it sarcastically too, that like, you know, like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
At least I took it.
But then he's all like knives out, and he goes like, he twists it.
Yeah. He's like, and he kind of tries to like save himself by saying like, you know, I was just, you know, joking, or, you know, I was not being serious about that.
Yeah. He just has no. There's, you know how there's some people. Okay, we all know that guy. For us, who, no, I'm kidding. Who just does not, like, you know, when it comes to social interactions, they're just not with it. And when they talk to people, they just rub everybody the wrong way. Mm-hmm. That's this dude.
Yeah.
And so that's literally in every interaction that he has in this movie. Literally any interaction that he's had, that's the lens that we see it through. It's this guy who, I don't know. You know what I mean? So
I think he feels a little like holier than thou because he's been out of the city, right? He's explored some worlds outside of, like, you know, the town he grew up in. This is somewhat of a small village, a small town. It's not that big. There's like a city part to it, and then a rural area to it as well. And everyone knows each other.
Yeah, and he thinks very highly of his intellectual abilities, and he paints everyone from his town as bigoted, backwards, I don't know, hill folks or something. Yeah.
Kind of stuck in their ways because they've never been out.
Yeah, which feels completely false based on the conversations with other people. Yep. There's so many smart people in this village, from like the mom to like the girl he talks to. Yeah.
Basically, everyone else has like a sense of maturity to them that he doesn't. Like he lacks, right? So even if these other people aren't as well read or haven't been out of the city, they still are like very comfortable with like who they are and where they are, which gives them like a sense of maturity that like he doesn't have. All right, so with the girl, that's when we first kind of get that he's a prick, and he the conversation, like I didn't really get it too much. So she is kind of in a bad spot, right? She's about to get married and she kind of doesn't want to, but she just feels like that's what she has to do because of her situation, her lack of education, and like that's just a place, you know, that's set for her.
Yeah. One interesting nugget I took away from it was she's like mulling over her decision, right, of whether or not to get married to this person. And she asks him, "What would you do in my situation?" And he completely freaks out. He's like, "Why are you asking me such a big question about your life?" So it further tells us that he has no experience making decisions for himself. Or
interesting, yeah.
Well, he doesn't even try to talk it through, like, with her, right? Like Farn said, maybe he's like socially inept. He just doesn't know how to have a conversation, especially when someone's opening up like that. Is the next conversation with the guy that he's actually looking for, or is it with the writer? Because remember, he meets her on the way to see that guy that the mayor recommended.
Yeah, he wasn't there at the time, so he...
Yeah, so he wasn't there. So then he goes to the bookstore, and he sees an accomplished writer there from his town.
Yeah.
Someone that he seemingly admires, right? Like, I think he does admire that writer in a way. He's read his work, and... this was probably when it hit me, like, oh, this is just going to be a bunch of conversations, because this was a pretty long one, and it was a lot of back and forth, too. And the writer, I think his name was Suleiman, he was very, very patient with him. I thought, like, the acting there was great as well, because because Sinan is being the douchebag he is, and the writer is being very patient and... you know, kind of engaging with him at the same time without like putting him down. And then the ending of that conversation was just amazing when he just like goes off on him.
He loses his patience, right?
Yeah. He's like, dude, all I want to do is put my feet in some salt water and like relax. Like that's all I need to do right now. I don't want to do anything else right now.
Right.
Like that's the only thing that's on his mind. But yeah, let's talk through that conversation. Sure. What was like very significant about it? Because I think this is probably the most significant conversation he has.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably the most significant because it is who he is, Sinan. He's an aspiring author, and he meets he meets a very successful writer in Turkey, even though Sinan may or may not admire him for some alleged offense. And that alleged offense is this Suleiman. He once promoted his own books at a conference, which Sinan...
No, not that he promoted. So you know how...
he was a part of it.
Oh, he wrote his own blurb? Was that it?
Yeah. So you know how you go to a conference, they introduce you. When they introduce you, they kind of give like a mini biography about you.
Yeah.
Sinan didn't like the idea that he wrote it, like he wrote his own biography for himself. And obviously you promote your work in that, right? When you are being introduced somewhere.
But Sinan, being the purist that he is, he's like that's not acceptable.
Right? Yeah, it kind of makes it seem like, oh, that's a sellout move.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get the sense of that, how that conversation is gonna go. For me personally, I saw it like in kind of the very beginning when he was like, you don't know me. I'm a writer as well. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say I'm talking to you because you're my competition, but
yeah.
I wouldn't call it competition. He made it like very clear from the beginning. I think this dude just has a hard time seeing like goodness in people. All he sees critical aspects.
Yeah,
of things.
He very much
bad aspects.
Very much lacks empathy, right?
Right. So that's what he kept pointing out in this conversation. I felt like he was like, but he's trying to be like sly about it. Like, I noticed that there were other speakers there, and just some of their blurbs. And the guy's like, why? What does this have to do with, like, why is that a problem that you have? And he's like, I just think it's really. He basically said in a roundabout way, I feel like it's douchey to write your own blurb. Saying that to a guy who did do that. And then saying, there was a bunch of people there, but there was one speaker who wasn't there. And I really love what he said. You want to remember what he said? He said, I don't want to, like, basically to be at this conference is to have no integrity. So what are your thoughts about that, having been at the conference? The guy's like, that's when he goes off on him. So... but I mean, I think this conversation, you get a good look at some of some of the thematic elements I think that they were trying to convey in this movie, which is like, I don't even know. That's why I gave it a kind of an average to low intangible score, because there's too many and it's kind of muddled. What do you guys think?
I think through this conversation, we're not exactly getting on anything about ideas. We're more getting to know Sinan and how his mind works, and how he's very much a person of ideas rather than a person of feeling or anything. We know he lacks empathy.
He's not pragmatic.
He's not pragmatic. He's very much a romantic. He was pure on his ideas of like what it means to be a writer, and he's struggling. So as a writer, so with that struggle, I think he's getting embittered. And that's where his barbs
naive.
Are. Yeah, he's also
naive because he's still young. He hasn't experienced anything, but he's arrogant at the same time because he feels like he knows so much more than he does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is also where I think we get like our first glimpse of, I guess, surrealism, where remember how the Suleiman is like walking away.
Yeah.
And then like as he's walking away, somehow Sinan is like in front of him again, and I forget what Sinan asks him, but he's like, hey, can you read my
he kind of apologizes,
manuscript,
right, for his earlier outburst. I didn't get how he got in front of him. I
thought like initially I thought maybe that was just real, but we know later in the movie there's more like surreal magical, like moments like that.
Realism, right.
So I figured that was also one of them, so I thought maybe that was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't like really sure, like, is that something he is imagining he should have done? I feel like that's what it's trying to be. Like any of those moments where him thinking, I should have just done this. Okay. I should have just asked this writer, like, hey, can you read mine? I'm an aspiring writer too.
Yeah, I felt the same way, because there was no way that dude was going to talk calmly to him after he just exploded on him.
Yeah.
And then looked him up and down like 4 times before leaving. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that I don't think that was. I think that was like an imagination.
Yeah, that's what my guess was too. And then I think the next conversation is the conversation with the like the like the construction company guy who has financed books in the past, but like he did it again. He tells him straight up like I did it as like an exchange, like I would finance these arts and I would get like, public funding for my projects or something like that, right? So he himself doesn't have any interest in funding the publishing of Sinan's book.
Unless
and
it brings him something.
Yeah, exactly. Unless there's an exchange, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything more to that conversation?
I guess just Sinan being more, hating people more because of...
Yeah. I feel like Sinan is getting more aggressive right now too, right? Because I think they get in kind of a shouting match with each other. I think maybe Sinan's also losing his patience of like, not finding what he wants or needs. Maybe it's time we bring in Sinan's father, Idris.
Yeah.
Who is a pretty big part of this movie.
Great actor.
Great actor. I thought he was probably my favorite actor or favorite character in the movie.
His laugh was awesome.
Yeah, man, his laugh was awesome. I was purposely laughing like him after I watched it.
Can I hear his laugh for us?
If I can remember to do it, but it's like very like nasally and like high pitched.
It was like
yeah.
It was kind of like that.
Like that. Like
Yeah.
But he is an educator. He's also super well read. Funny guy, like I said in the preview. He's like the comic relief in the film.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem with him though, he's a gambling addict. He bets on horses and he has like lost a fortune like doing so, right? So much so like the reputation of his family, Sinan, his mom, and Sinan's sister Yasmin as well. Like it's like tarnished in the community more or less. Everyone is like, your father owes me, this or that, and kind of makes it harder for Sinan and the rest of the family to like, hold their head up high outside. But it doesn't seem to bother Idris so much. He's still like out and about and doing his thing, and
he's pretty stubborn in his.
Well, he's stubborn, but I was gonna say he insists that he hasn't gambled, and we never actually see him gambling, right? Like we see some altercations like with some people in the town, but that could just be from previous debts that he still owes. But we never get like any clear indication like who to believe here. Like is he still like secretly going out and like throwing away the family's money, or
for sure
is he?
You think you have some doubt?
I have some doubt only because they never made it like obvious.
I mean, he catches him at the betting studio.
Well, he met him at the betting studio, except he is alone there just reading, and he says like he's there to be alone, right?
He's filling out his score or whatever sheet, but then that's later shown to be drawing his
it's shown to be that he's drawing his lost dog sign.
But he has salary that comes in monthly, and then his mom complains that she's not getting
salary. It was a bonus. Or something like
overtime
pay.
Overtime pay, and the salary keeps getting missing, and the lights keep going off.
The salary goes to his mom.
Okay.
Right. So like she's getting the money directly, but she was expecting to get more one day because of overtime pay, and he just says it never came. Maybe it didn't come. I don't know. I wanted to believe him, man. I wanted to believe him.
Never believe a gambler.
I don't know. It's an interesting idea, man, given that you don't know sometimes what's real in this movie and what's not.
Well, there was that one scene, right, where, Sinan has that money in his pocket. So he goes to his grandparents' house, and it's like an old Quran manuscript or something, and he sells it to a bookstore. And the bookstore is like, oh, this is just a copy. It's not like the original. It's not like an original manuscript. Right. So he still gives him some money for it. And that money goes missing, or portion of it does.
And he knows exactly how much it is. And stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like there was that moment. So it was like, well, did he take it? But Sinan like doesn't confront him directly to be like, well, you took it.
Yeah.
But also, was that scene real? You can say that about anything, right?
No, the scene of like the selling of the manuscript, or
the scene where he's talking to him. He's like, how do I know it was 300? You tell me.
Oh, is Sinan imagining him confronting his
yeah.
All right.
It could be, man. Again, I don't think the father took it. I don't think Idris took it.
It's certainly a way to view it. I don't think that they made it clear. I think you're right. I don't know if it's the point,
I mean, I think the point is there is a point there that if he has, stopped, he still has like a long way to go for like redemption because of the harm he has caused, and like the reputation that has been gained as like a gambling addict. That he can't shake it off, even though he is not gambling anymore. Like it's still like with him. That's the way I was thinking about it. Only because it's sadder that way.
Yeah, we should describe his relationship.
Yeah, so that's what I want to get into next, because Sinan is totally resentful towards him, right? Mm-hmm. He does not like his father, even though his father is probably the biggest reason he wants to be a writer in the first place, because his father has probably instilled like that love of like reading, because that's what his father has. But Sinan totally resents him. He mocks him behind his back all the time. He, even to his face, like he's not very respectful. But yeah, like what do you want to say more about that relationship?
I don't know. I think at the beginning of the movie, it seems very like he looks up to his dad, or he seems very like he's in admiration at points. You see that in the beginning, and then I think as he hears more and more, then we see it coming. Like we see more of that resentment coming out. But even still, I mean, depending on which scenes were real and which scenes were not, the fact that he could never really confront his dad directly about the money that was lost or taken.
I think just because that's the ultimate taboo of stealing, especially amongst family members.
Yeah.
That's why he never confronts him directly. That's probably it.
Could be.
Maybe. I mean,
he
directly accused his sister, basically.
Yeah.
That's true.
Instead, even though he knows it wasn't her. And
and there was a very plausible
alternative,
other reason.
The furniture mover.
There you go. The furniture movers that was standing at the door with the door open, and Yasmin closes like the door into the house, right? Or like the door that goes into the living room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that furniture mover was by himself with an open door and an open jacket, and he could have easily just pickpocketed it.
Yeah. So while Sinan does not respect his dad at all, right, for putting the family in this hard financial situation, he has a right to be angry, but his disrespectfulness, his mom has a problem with that. Yeah. Because his mom still very much loves his father, while at the same time hating on all of his vices, right? His gambling,
and she brings up a good point. Like, hey, there's he's never hit you. Like, there's fathers that are abusive and alcoholics, and he's not that. Like he has good qualities to him too. Basically, is what she's pointing out.
Yeah, she tries to redeem his father in his eyes, right? Sinan's not about to do that right now, but things might change in the future.
What is the next conversation that happens? Is it the imams?
Yeah, the imams. That's probably my second favorite conversation.
Yeah, same. It was a good conversation too. So we should mention that Sinan goes out right to the rural farm, his dad's, or you could say his grandparents' farm.
And he sees his
every weekend, pretty much.
He sees his dad laying down under a pear tree with a noose around his neck.
No, the noose is on the tree.
The noose is on the tree. He's lying directly underneath it.
Yeah, but asleep. But Sinan has thinks maybe the worst, that maybe his father died,
and
because his dad is overworking himself, trying to dig a well where there's no water, right. But he's convinced that there's water there. But yeah, this conversation with the imams, I think this is a little more higher level, just abstract theology, life. I don't know, what do you want to call it?
I want to say
it's obviously religion.
Yeah, it's obviously religion. But it's more than that. It's about philosophy. It's about one's own relationship to religion, not even specifically Islam. They talk about how the religion has its place, even if you fully don't have faith in the religion you're practicing. Even the Imam talks about the value of religion at a pragmatic level. And the openness and the candor in which they talk, that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know how realistic that dialogue is, because most religious observers, most Muslim practitioners would be more... I don't know. Faraz, what do you say?
I think, now, thinking about this from a Muslim perspective, being Muslim, right? I think in a Muslim country, it's a totally different dynamic than it is for us here in the West, where we're like a very clear minority. And there's like a very distinct way of life that is, you know, not the religion and within the religion. Whereas in a society like Turkey, which is like 90 some percent plus Muslim, or like any other Muslim countries like we may have been to, there's a wide spectrum of people who will call themselves, you know, Muslims, and yet, you know, be at any part of that spectrum.
Turkey is probably more that than any country outside of maybe like, you know, I don't know, maybe Iran would be there, but Turkey's definitely one of those countries. It's you've got very conservative Muslims, you've got very progressive Muslims, like some of the most progressive Muslims in the world.
So I feel like that conversation would be totally normal in Turkey.
I see.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's part of their everyday life again. Like it's something they probably experience. They probably have people that come to the mosque that, you know, fall into some of these categories that the imams talk about. And then there's also like the, I guess you could say, quote unquote, stereotypical, you know, practicing Muslim, the way like Hollywood portrays a Muslim here in the West.
You know, I was surprised in that conversation at the fact that he never brought up the fact that the imam still owes his grandparents 2 gold coins.
Yeah.
He never brought that up, and I was expecting him to. And I think anybody watching the movie, like, I mean, if you were paying attention, you would have been like, okay, when is this coming? And it never came. I wonder why.
I thought it was gonna be the first thing he says.
Yeah.
Because like, he almost does.
Like,
it's in his character to be confrontational, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, he's confrontational for sure. I mean, the way he confronts them initially, he like scares them and like, you know, aggressively comes up to them.
He does also finish the conversation in a confrontational way. He says, all of my father's gambling activities paid someone, and that money eventually made it to pay your salaries, right?
Yeah. See, I think with his relationship with his father, just to go back to that, I think it just depends on who he's talking to, because sometimes he's supporting him.
Yeah.
Like in that conversation.
You think
it's just confrontation first and foremost. And then whatever he's just a nonconformist. That's what it is. So like whatever people are saying, he's like, no, but he just plays devil's advocate to everything. So if somebody insults his father, then he plays devil's advocate. He's like, no, but come on, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. He's a great guy though. Basically. I mean, you know, so
yeah, it comes down, playing devil's advocate is just being confrontational in a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this conversation is going too smooth right now. Let's say what people don't want to hear. Yeah, exactly. That's what he's trying to do. I mean, they're probably doing it for the drama or like the narrative in the movie itself. But like, I guess you could say they did that pretty well.
Yeah.
Naturally, you could say, within the characters, like, you know, characteristics.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a way for them to hit these big ideas.
Yeah. For their own merit, right? They didn't necessarily connect with the story, some of those ideas. But it's still an interesting conversation.
I mean, you could make the case that whole scene was unnecessary in this movie. You know, you could probably make the case. I feel like you can make the case for a lot of that in this movie. I don't know. I don't think so necessarily.
I wouldn't say that, because remember, like I said, I thought this movie is trying to give us an idea of like everyday life within this town. And when you take out these conversations, then you're missing out on the lives of those people.
Yeah, you don't get the sense of what the people are like, right?
Yeah, so like right now we get the sense of the imams, his grandparents. It's the smaller conversation, but it's there. Get an idea of like, you know, what they're doing. Like I kind of liked it a lot. Like it was like the grandma is just like annoyed at the imam. Mm-hmm. Like he just keeps going to all these like events. He's making your grandpa give the call to prayer.
Yeah.
And he's so old, he might mess it up. And if he messes it up, his reputation will be.
Yeah.
Because the family can't handle any more disgrace, right?
Yeah.
No, but like these little like conversations of individual people. It's like I thought, like, I mean, this is what I loved about the movie is everyone had like a place in the town, and like it paints like a really nice picture of the town. And
so many movies don't
lives.
do this. Mm-hmm. Characters need to exist for their own reason and not for the plot's reason. And that's why I liked a lot of the characters in here. They're their own beings.
So yeah, it doesn't like add to the plot or to Sinan's like goal to publish a book, but it gives like insight to like the town.
You know, I mean, I'm with you guys, obviously. I'm just saying that I know that a bunch of people, I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine that a bunch of people, that would be a criticism of this movie, that it's just too long and there's too much dialogue, right? But I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you could argue that a lot of this is quote unquote unnecessary dialogue if you're just talking, plot wise.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know what substance this adds outside of like building those characters. I don't know. This doesn't add. I don't know if this adds any substance really to which we would call the plot or to the narrative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't. I guess. Yeah, because the plot is simple. We can probably say it in a sentence.
Right.
He's
exactly.
trying to publish a book. He eventually sells his dad's dog to get money and publishes the book.
Yeah.
He goes through military service for a year, comes back, realizes no one's read it except his dad.
Yeah, isn't that crazy, huh? His mom, he dedicated the book to his mom.
Yeah.
She hasn't even read it. And his dad, huh? She tried,
She said she tried.
Yeah.
His sister tried.
Yeah, his sister tried too.
Yeah.
I think his mom said she didn't get around to it or something like that.
The bookstore is just like, not a single copy sold.
But his dad, the dude he's
read it twice.
We said resented. Not only it's his favorite book. He has a copy of the newspaper article where he was even mentioned, stashed away in his wallet. He carries with him everywhere. The only guy who supported him, like, throughout the whole thing, I thought that was really
getting back to the religious conversation, I like the last bits of it where they're talking about the absurdities in life and how modern technology kind of takes away from spirituality. Sinan goes on a tirade about how the imam drives a motorbike, and the imam comes back at him. He's like, "You think the fall of humanity is going to be me riding a motorbike? Really?" He's like that. And then Sinan comes back with that anecdote about someone, the stoning of the symbolic stoning of the shaitan
at Hajj.
And he's like, some person threw their iPhone, and it points out that absurdity, right? How like modernity is making its way into like these old practices, and that kind of feeds back later into how Sinan feels about everything, how life to Sinan doesn't have its own meaning. Like, he finds absurdity in anything and everything.
That the purity of like what is life is like tainted with these other things, these outside things.
Yeah.
Kind of his approach to his writing as well, right? Like, if you make it a tourist book or you promote yourself, you're selling out. It's not pure anymore. Again, it's a very like small-minded like way of thinking, or you could say very just not pragmatic or practical way of thinking, because he hasn't experienced anything. That's all it is. So let's talk about like towards the end, because we're pretty much there now. He basically loses hope on having any money to finance his book or to get it published. That event happens where some of the money he has disappears, whether it's his dad who took it or his sister or the furniture movers. It doesn't matter, I guess. He basically decides, I'm going to go and sell my dad's dog and use that money to get it published. So that's what he does. And we also learned that his dad is clearly like, maybe not depressed, but like devastated by it, right? Because his mom tells him, like, I heard him crying. Like, I've never heard him cry before, like in the other room the other night, because like he's just missing his dog. And he even mentions it earlier in the movie where one of the shopkeepers, like the jewelry store, he's like, hey, if you can give me that guard dog, I'll forgive his debt. And Sinan tells him like he wouldn't give up that dog for $1 million, right? Because like it's a sentimental value to him. So Sinan's, I mean, we know he's a prick, but that's probably the biggest dick move he does is sell his dad's dog without telling him. Gets the book published. Again, no one's read it. It doesn't sell a single copy in the bookstore. He does his military service, comes back, and
he finds that his dad is living.
His dad has left. Yeah, his dad has went to the farm pretty much and is living out there. He has stopped digging the well. He finally admitted that there is no water there. Like he quotes some writer where he says like, a timely retreat is successful.
It's still a victory. Yeah.
Still a victory. Yeah.
He even quotes Sinan's book in one context, right, about time and
he
making a notch.
Yep. So like that's like Sinan knows he's like truly read it. He's not just saying he's read it.
Yeah.
I mean, like he also brings up like, hey, I know like, you didn't say very nice things about me in the book. Like I know who I was. Like out of these characters in the book, like who represents me.
But he has zero resentment against him. He says, "Yeah, like, it's good. It's good, right? It's healthy."
Yeah, the dad is like totally forgiving, still encouraging, and still like just nice to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like despite like how rude Sinan has been to him, and I think we get that last surreal, not real visual of Sinan hanging in the well.
Oh, I want to talk about that. Yeah.
By his neck.
So
yeah, let's talk about that.
I think that's finally in the mind of his father. His father's imagining it.
No.
Yeah.
No
I
way.
think we shift perspective for that last scene.
Explain.
He's fearing that his son is hanging by a noose in a well which is futile to dig further. And his father wakes up from his nightmare and he finds his son missing, and he doesn't want to think about his son hanging in the well, so he doesn't check there. But he knows that he hasn't checked there. And then finally, after looking at everything else, he goes to the well and he finds his son in the well digging. So death is mixed with that previous concept of futility for drinking for water, which Sinan is now doing.
So I didn't see it that way. I'll just say that.
Me neither.
I think honestly, that a lot of the imagery in this movie, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of when people put imagery in a movie without kind of setting it up first or giving some kind of context, right? So I think that they did do a lot of that. However, I think that they did that to set up the very last scene where he goes and we're expecting for him to see Sinan hanging, or we're not sure what's going to happen. And instead, we see him digging further, continuing what his father's thing was, right? So I think that's what they did it. The way that I see it is, if we are to draw meaning from it, is Sinan has two options. One is to wallow in his misery and regret about the fact that he resented the one dude who supported him unconditionally, loved him unconditionally, let's say. Or he can swallow it up and be like his dad, who is always positive, and I don't know, they might have said something in that last conversation, like you just have to keep working or something like that. I don't remember if it was something like that. I saw it as that. Like there's two realities for him. Either one, he can be swallowed in his misery. That's him hanging. Or he can just work towards something.
I saw it more like what Farhan is saying too. Yeah. Because I thought he finally felt some shame and regret for, how he's treated his father this entire time. Not just like how he's treated him, but like what he said about him. Right? I mean, he says some pretty harsh things, especially to his mom about his dad.
Yeah.
And I think he truly feels shame at that point. Shameful to the point where he, visualizes like what his worth is, which is not anything because he hasn't become a successful writer. He's not an educator. Mm-hmm. He's not doing really anything at this point. You know, he never he never had that relationship with his dad that he could have had. Like, he probably could have helped his dad just as much as like his dad was helping him, but he like never reciprocated that relationship. Yeah. So I just felt that's what it was. Like it was a sense of shame and regret.
Sure.
And that's why we have that surreal visualization of him hanging.
So Sinan never wanted to even acknowledge that there might be some similar traits between himself and his father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are very similar.
They're very similar. And that's why I think that the perspective change really happened.
Interesting.
Because earlier in the movie, Sinan imagines his father had hung himself, imagining all the reasons that could lead up to his suicide, right? And in one of the final conversations, Sinan seems hopeless in his outlook towards life. So that's why I think his father thinks he might be suicidal, and that's why he has that dream.
So that's an interesting perspective. I mean, that's the thing with this movie, right? Is like, it's just so subjective that it can really just, I guess, be anything you want it to
so
be.
let's say that Sinan is turning out to be exactly like his father, right? Let's just say that he is. Unproven assumption right now. But that if he were to become his father, what would he do? He would continue digging in the well, would he not?
Yeah.
He would find meaning in futile actions. He would.
I think you know how we were talking about how he only sees people in a critical lens, like negatively.
Well, he's reformed now. I think his army service.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So I think at the end of the movie, I don't think it's service. I think the acknowledgement of his dad being his only fan, I think that's what really made him change. And I think maybe that's where he starts to see like more of the positive in people. So if he's being like his dad, it's in that respect where he's starting to lose some of that critical
certainly
element.
That would help, but it doesn't. Your personality doesn't switch your perspective. I think overall his army service is assumed to be a couple of years. I think that's the time where he softened his edges, so to speak.
Maybe, but they never really talked about it.
No, they don't talk about it.
They talked about his army. They made it like a chore. Like, okay, this is something he has to do, and he comes back. They don't make it seem like he reforms from it.
No. But we knew that he was very unexperienced in life, and he's got all these romantic notions. The army would quickly break down any sense of romantic ideals or, yeah.
One thing that supports that, Fahad, is just how he takes the news that, not a single book sold, how, like, no one in his family has read it. Like, as he's even learning. I don't think
that was surprising, though, because even when he gave the book to his mom, when she started congratulating him, he said, I have doubts that anyone will like it, so don't congratulate me, right?
Anyone liking it versus even reading it, though. I thought he would like throw a fit when he was told that not a single book sold. Like he would like say something critical about the bookstore. Like, where did you put it?
This is the new Sinan.
Sure? But he just kind of exactly. That's what I'm saying. Maybe he is somewhat like, all right, man. I just wanted to do this one thing. It didn't work out, but whatever. Live and let learn. Or something.
It's positive. If that's the case, I wish they would. I wish that they would. I don't know. Talk more about that or explain that a little bit more. That's the thing. It's not clear. It's not clear exactly where this guy's.
You're talking about when the changes come through for him.
Yeah, if it's from serving all they showed in the army was literally him crossing a river. Or something. That's the only thing that they show about him being in the army. So that's what made me think it was like afterthought. Maybe they just included that as an afterthought or whatever.
But if I were to direct the movie, I would have shown him being miserable in the army service
and being being like, I miss people home or whatever, Yeah. But I miss that
simple life.
Yeah, I mean, I could buy that too. I mean, it's totally plausible.
I don't know. I'm trying to think like why he would be digging. Finding meaning in like something futile or doing just work for the sake of work because
it's hope, right? I'm sure they talked about hope at some point in the religious conversation. I could be mistaken. I mean, I'll have to. I know that for sure they talked about hope. That's what I saw that as well. Is like
I saw it more existential themes portrayed there.
Mm-hmm. Because his dad is constantly digging in that well because he's hopeful. Mm-hmm. He's a very hopeful guy. I mean, you can also say like if you want to draw another metaphor. I don't know if you need to, but the well is like his gambling habit, right? I mean, he just keeps digging and digging in search for something that's gonna cure all of his problems, but it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, that well. But that's
hit it.
That's us seeing it through Sinan's lens, right? His dad's thing is look, there's hope.
I think his dad just genuinely enjoys labor with his hands. He finds it meaningful, and that's why he's become a shepherd, because he wants to just live life a little bit more rough around the edges.
Sure, but maybe. The prospect of water is talked about several times in that in the movie. So I think there is a hope aspect for 100%.
Yeah,
exactly.
He keeps saying that. Like,
he's talking about, look, this is all going to be green. Just give it some time. Yeah. This is all going to be green. We're going to be great.
That's true.
Yeah, basically, like their lives will be changed for the better if they do find water. Like it would be significant. I mean, that's a good point. It is somewhat like a gambling habit. So maybe that only supports my theory that he did stop gambling, but he replaced it with this by digging in the well every weekend.
Maybe. Yeah.
Which is, again, just as futile. Like, it's not getting him anywhere.
It's the Sisyphus myth, right? How do you say that? Sisyphean, the Greek god that's pushing up the rock up on a hill, only to have it roll back.
Oh, that's Jerry.
Jerry?
I'm kidding.
What are you smoking for?
Yeah, it's just Jerry, dude. He's always doing that with the rocks. Always pushing rocks up the hill.
So did you guys just feel? Was it a sad movie?
No, because it didn't have a tragic end or anything.
Yeah,
it
had an ordinary end, right? More or less ordinary.
Yeah,
like through and through, it was just ordinary. I think that's why I loved it.
I think it ends on a positive
note. It's a
note.
movie that can change your perspective on a lot of things, I think, but not sad or happy or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe it can. If you are maybe one of those pricks, maybe it can help
reform.
You have some self-reflection, self-realization. Like, hey, is that me? Am I Sinan?
Sinan's
I did feel that.
I mean, I am definitely Sinan in some aspects of life, for sure. Maybe not everything like him, but for some things, I'm probably.
Are you misanthrope? No.
No, maybe not, but like.
His romantic ideals? I mean.
I have some pretty romantic ideals.
That was all of us.
Sure.
You know what? Now that I think about it, you're pretty close to Sinan, bro. You're pretty close to him, dude.
I'm always like, I don't know.
But
when it comes to socialism, I always like say, hey, it's just this easy. It's that straightforward. Like, why can't we just be like that? But obviously, there's a lot more nuance.
But you're not confrontational about it.
I'm definitely not.
You're more like, look, this is what I think. Take it or leave it. He's like, this is what I think. You have. Why don't you believe this? You know, or this is what you believe. This is why you're wrong. Basically, I don't know if that's what it is, but it's a little bit like that.
He's not like directly saying he's wrong, that they're wrong either. He kind of like, again, he says it in a roundabout way to be sly, to be like coy about it, but he's really he's still being a douche. Anyway, good movie, Fahad. I was happy to have seen this movie.
Yeah,
I probably would have never picked it up to watch.
I just want to expose you guys to all these movies.
Yeah, thanks.
That
man.
I never watch myself unless there's a podcast that we're not recording.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. Want to see what your tally is? Check out thetwiceover.com. All the movies we've done are listed there, as well as what we're watching for the current week. Follow us at The Twice Over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can leave us any suggestions, feedback, or comments. And if you're about it, you can also support us on Patreon. The music you hear on this podcast is from Amerigo Gazaway. You can find his work on Bandcamp and Spotify.